Don't worry, sweetheart, my mother said, smiling at my daughter like she was doing her a favor. Your mom already agreed. You're coming with me. Gracie's backpack strap was twisted around her fist, so tight her knuckles were white. She looked past my mom, straight at me, and I saw it pure confusion turning into panic, like her body knew before her brain could name it. The school office smelled like copier toner and cheap hand sanitizer. The secretary kept glancing between us, frozen, not sure which adult to believe. My mom's hand was already on Gracie's shoulder, not gentle, possessive. I didn't hear myself say it, but my voice came out sharp anyway. Take your hand off my child. My father stepped out from the hallway like he'd been waiting for the moment to feel important. Lower your voice, he warned, calm and careful, the way he gets when he wants to look reasonable in front of witnesses. You're making a scene. Gracie's eyes darted to him. She took half a step back, the kind of step a kid takes when they're trying not to cry in public. My mom's smile didn't break. We're family, she told the secretary, like that was a password. There was an emergency last night. We're just helping. Last night. The banquet hall. The microphone. The way the room clapped while my daughter tried to breathe without making noise. I walked past the counter, past the shocked secretary, and put my body between my mom and my child. Gracie, I said. Steady now. Come to me. Gracie moved so fast, she nearly tripped, and when she grabbed my hand, her palm was sweaty and shaking. My mom's face tightened for half a second, just enough to show the real her, then she smoothed it right back into that glossy, church lady calm. Lauren, she murmured, using my name like a leash. Don't do this in front of people. My father leaned closer, voice low. You can't keep her from us. We have paperwork. Paperwork. That word made my stomach drop, because I'd seen my parents use paper like weapons my whole life. A form here, a signature there. Something for insurance, something for school, something just in case. The secretary cleared her throat. Ma'am, she said to my mom, we can't release a student unless the parent approves. My mom slid a folded document across the counter like she'd rehearsed it. She did. I watched the secretary's eyes move over the page. Then I saw my name. Not my handwriting. Not my signature. Just my name, printed, beside a box checked yes. My mother had forged consent to take my daughter. Gracie squeezed my hand harder. Mom, she whispered, barely audible. Am I in trouble? That question almost made my knees buckle. No, I said immediately. You are not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. My dad gave a small, disappointed sigh, like I was being difficult about a simple plan. This is for her stability, he said. You've proven you can't provide structure. Structure. That's the word they always use when they want control to sound like love. I looked at the secretary. Call the principal, I said. And if they don't leave right now, call the resource officer. My mom gasped, offended, as if I'd threatened her with something vulgar. Lauren, my father's jaw flexed. You're overreacting. Overreacting was what they called it when I refused to be quiet. Gracie's shoulders were up around her ears. She kept staring at my mom like she was trying to figure out how someone who brought cupcakes to school could also be the reason her throat felt like it was closing. My mom's voice softened, syrupy. Honey, we're not the bad guys here. We're trying to protect you. Protect her. From me. The principal appeared in the doorway, eyes already wary, like she'd heard my tone through the walls. What's going on? Before my parents could perform, I spoke first. My parents tried to remove my daughter from school with a falsified consent form, I said. I'm revoking their pickup privileges. Today, my mom's cheeks flushed. That's not what it is, I cut in. And if you touch her again, I'm filing a report. My father stared at me, shocked by the word report. He hates records. He hates anything that can't be rewritten later at Thanksgiving. The principal took the paper from the secretary and read it slowly. Her expression changed. "Sir, ma'am," she said. "Firm now. You need to leave." My mom laughed, small and breathy, like the principal had told a joke. "This is a misunderstanding," my dad's calm cracked. "We are her grandparents." "And I'm her mother," I said. "Which you remembered last night, when you announced she wasn't worth anything." My mom's eyes flicked toward Gracie, and for a split second I saw fear. Not fear for my daughter. Fear that my daughter might repeat what she'd heard, Gracie whispered. "Last night, when Grandpa said I was the problem." My dad's face went stone. "You're putting words in her mouth." "No," Gracie said, voice shaking but clear. "You said it." The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that changes people. My mom grabbed her purse like she'd just realized she was standing in the wrong spotlight. "Come on," she hissed to my dad. My father held my gaze, and his voice dropped into something cold. "This isn't over." I didn't answer him. I just pulled Gracie close and felt her ribs moving too fast against my arm, because I knew exactly what my father meant. And I knew exactly what my mother would do next. I finally noticed what Gracie had been staring at near my mother's feet. A little rolling suitcase, the kind you take for a weekend trip. A bright pink luggage tag dangled from the handle with Gracie's name written in my mom's careful cursive spelled right, like she'd practiced. They hadn't come to talk, they'd come to take her. "So if you're still here with me, don't go anywhere, because the reason they tried to take my daughter from school wasn't just spite. It was leverage." Part 2. My parents love to say they don't play favorites. They just notice effort. They reward responsibility. It sounds so clean when they say it, like a parenting podcast. In my family, it meant my older sister Kendra was the star, and I was the cautionary tale. Kendra got asked about her plans. I got asked if I'd figured myself out yet. Kendra got applause for breathing. I got lectures for taking up air. When I got pregnant at 22, my mom didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just tilted her head like she was studying a stain. "Well," she said, "that's your choice." Kendra showed up at the baby shower with a diaper genie and a speech about how hard it must be without a husband. Everyone nodded like it was concern. I smiled like it didn't slice. Gracie's dad lasted 2 years and then needed space, which is what men say when they want to leave without being called the bad guy. So it was me, my paycheck, my calendar full of school reminders, and a little girl who felt everything too big. Gracie didn't struggle the way my parents understand struggle. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't defiant. She just processed words differently. Letters flipped. Lines blurred. She'd read a sentence perfectly one day and stumble over the same sentence the next, like the page had moved to mess with her. The first time she whispered, "Mom, why do words hate me?" I wanted to punch a wall. We did the evaluations. We got the supports. We found a specialist who explained that Gracie's brain wasn't broken. It was wired in a different pattern, and it came with gifts if you stopped treating it like a defect. Gracie could remember directions after hearing them once. She could build a whole story in her head from a single picture. She could spot a lie in someone's voice before most adults could. My parents saw none of that. They saw a report with the word learning disability and turned it into a personality. At Thanksgiving, my dad would clap Gracie on the head like she was a dog and say, "Hey, kiddo, remember." We read the big words slowly. People laughed. It was the relieved kind of laughter, the kind people do when they're glad the target isn't them. My mom would swoop in afterward with her sugar voice. "He doesn't mean anything by it," she'd tell Gracie. "Grandpa just wants you to try harder." It's said, "Try harder." As if her brain hadn't been trying since birth. Kendra's daughter, Isla, was 2 years younger than Gracie and already being introduced as gifted. Kendra brought her to family events dressed like a tiny CEO. Isla learned quickly how to smile when adults praised her, how to tilt her chin when cameras came out, and my parents ate it up. They didn't just love Isla. They used Isla. Every time Gracie needed extra time, my mom would glance at Isla reading a menu out loud and sigh dramatically. Some kids are just easier, she'd say, like Gracie could hear without having feelings. The only person who ever stopped it was my great-aunt Darlene. She was my dad's older sister, the one my mom called difficult because Aunt Darlene didn't do polite lies. She did quiet truth. Darlene had no kids of her own, just a small house on a lake, a set of strong opinions, and the kind of presence that made my dad behave like a man who remembered consequences. In the months before she died, I visited her more. Gracie loved her because Aunt Darlene never talked down to her. She'd slide a notebook across the table and say, "Show me how you think." One afternoon, Gracie was struggling to read a camping checklist. She paused, jaw tight, bracing for the familiar disappointment. Aunt Darlene covered the page with her hand. "Stop," she said. Gracie looked up, terrified she'd failed. Aunt Darlene leaned closer. "Smart people ask for tools," she told her. "They don't beg for permission to exist." Then she read the list with Gracie, slow and calm, no jokes, no comparisons. When Gracie finally smiled, Aunt Darlene looked at me over her glasses and said, "Your parents are doing it again." "Int quate." I didn't ask what she meant because I'd lived it. She tapped the table. "Promise me you won't let them shame that girl in public." I tried to laugh it off. "They're just old school." Aunt Darlene's eyes sharpened. "Promise me." So I did. And I meant it. 2 weeks after her funeral, a man in a charcoal suit knocked on my apartment door. He didn't look like the kind of guy who brings good news. "I'm Victor Hale," he said, holding a folder. "I was your aunt's attorney. She asked me to deliver something to you personally. I thought it was a keepsake, a necklace, a letter. Instead, he handed me a sealed envelope and said, 'Your aunt reorganized her trust.'" My stomach flipped. "She had a trust?" He gave a small, tired smile. "She had more than your parents let on." Victor explained it in plain language, like he knew I didn't have time for legal theater. The lake house, the investment account. Everything was owned by the trust. My parents had been living off the benefits quietly, comfortably, while acting like it was all theirs to give away. Then he said the sentence that made the air leave my lungs. "She added a trigger clause," he told me. "If your parents ever try to officially exclude Gracie on paper or on record, the trust shifts." Immediately. "Shifts how?" I asked. Victor didn't answer right away. He just looked past me toward the living room, where Gracie was on the floor coloring, unaware that adults were fighting over her like property. "It protects her," he said. "And it removes the people who've been using her as a punching bag." He slid the envelope closer. "Don't threaten them with it. Don't mention it. Just keep it safe." I promised him I would. And then my parents mailed an invitation covered in gold script. A legacy banquet, celebrating our family's future at their church. The word legacy should have made me laugh. Instead, it made my skin prickle. Because my parents don't throw parties when they're happy. They throw parties when they're about to control someone. And last night, they did it with a microphone. If you want to understand why my mother brought a suitcase with my daughter's name on it, you have to hear what they announced after dessert. Part 3. Before I tell you what happened on that stage, hit like and subscribe because the next part is where everything flips. And you're going to want the receipts. The church fellowship hall was packed, which was exactly what my parents wanted. They love an audience. They love community. They love the kind of crowd that will clap first and ask questions later. Gracie wore a navy dress she picked herself. She kept smoothing the skirt like she could smooth the night into something safe. Kendra arrived late, of course, sweeping in with Isla and a smile that said she'd already won. Isla had a little sparkly headband and the confidence of a kid who's never been corrected in public. My dad was working the room like a politician. My mom floated behind him, hugging people, collecting compliments. Every few minutes, my mom would squeeze Gracie's cheek and say, "There's our helper," Like that was her official title. Then the slideshow started. Not family photos. Not wedding pictures. A highlight reel. Isla on a spelling bee stage. Isla holding a trophy. Isla smiling beside my parents like she belonged to them. Then one photo of Gracie caught mid-blink, holding a science project sign that someone else had clearly written. A ripple of laughter passed through the tables. Gracie didn't laugh. She lowered her eyes and began picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. It was her tell. When she's trying not to cry, she gets quiet and busy, like her hands can do the emotions for her. I leaned in and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded too fast. "I'm fine. That's what kids say when they're not." My dad took the microphone after dessert. He did the speech about faith and family and the legacy we're building. My mom stood beside him with that picture smile, the one she practices in the mirror. Then my dad said, "Tonight we're also celebrating the future caretaker of everything we've worked for." Kendra's hand landed on Isla's shoulder like she was presenting a prize. My dad raised his glass. "Isla will inherit the lake house." People clapped. My mom stepped up smoothly and added, "And the education fund $410,000 will go to Isla too." More clapping. A couple people actually cheered, like inheritance is a talent show. My daughter sat there, perfectly still, like she was trying to make herself smaller than the chair. My mom's eyes slid to Gracie, and she said it, bright and clear into the microphone. "Gracie won't be included. She needs a different path." A murmur rolled across the room. My dad chuckled. "Some kids thrive with structure. Some kids don't. Then he looked right at Gracie, right in front of the whole church, and said, "We've done our best, but we can't reward failure." Gracie's breath hitched. Her face went blank in a way that terrified me. Not crying, not reacting, just disappearing. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. Every head turned. I didn't have a speech ready. I didn't have a plan. I had one promise echoing in my head, Aunt Darlene's voice telling me not to let them shame her in public. So I smiled, because smiling keeps people from calling you hysterical. And I said, loud enough for every phone camera and every gossip text, "You can't give Isla what you don't own." The clapping died like someone cut the power. My dad blinked hard. "Excuse me?" I reached into my purse and held up the sealed envelope. I didn't open it. I didn't read it like a courtroom drama. I just showed the letterhead and the signature line. Victor Hale, Attorney at Law, Trust Amendment. My mom's lips parted. My dad's face drained. Kendra stood up so fast her chair tipped. "This is inappropriate," Kendra snapped, loud, like volume could turn truth into rudeness. I kept my voice calm. "What's inappropriate is disinheriting a child on a stage." My dad tried to laugh. "Lauren, you're confused. That trust is ours." "No," I said. "It's Aunt Darlene's, and she set protections you didn't think you'd need." My mom leaned toward me, still smiling for the crowd, but her words were knives. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Think about Gracie. Think about the family." I looked down at my daughter. She was staring at the table, frozen, like she didn't want to see what happened next. "This is me thinking about Gracie," I said. My dad's voice sharpened. "Sit down." I shook my head. "Not anymore." I took Gracie's hand and walked out, past the dessert table, past the shocked church ladies, past my parents' perfect little stage. In the parking lot, Gracie climbed into the car and whispered, "Did I mess up?" "No," I told her. They did. That night, after she fell asleep, I emailed Victor the video clip from the banquet, my dad's words, my mom's announcement, everything captured on somebody's live stream. At 6:04 the next morning, Victor replied with one sentence that made my hands go numb. The trigger event occurred on record. "We begin today, and by lunch, my parents weren't just angry, they were desperate." My dad called me 7 times before sunrise. When I didn't pick up, he left a voicemail in his calmest voice, his most dangerous one. "Lauren, he said. "Stop whatever you think you're doing. You're embarrassing us. This can be handled privately." Then his calm snapped. "If you don't fix this, I'll make sure you lose her." Kendra texted a full-page sermon about respect and forgiveness, ending with, "Mom and Dad only want what's best for Gracie. What they wanted was access." Because an hour later, my mom emailed me a family plan she'd typed up like a corporate memo. Gracie would spend temporary weeks at their house to reset expectations, and I would focus on improving stability. At the bottom, my dad had already signed, as if it was decided. That was the detail that made my skin crawl. They weren't asking, they were scheduling, because the trust didn't just protect my daughter. It threatened to take away the life my parents had been living off for years. And that's why, 12 hours later, they showed up at Gracie's school with a forged form and a suitcase. Part 4. I drove home with Gracie buckled in the back, both of us too quiet. When we got inside, she kicked off her shoes and went straight to her room like she needed walls to hold her together. A minute later, she came out holding the sparkly headband she'd worn to the banquet. "I should throw this away," she said. My throat tightened. "Why?" She stared at it like it was cursed. "Because Grandma said I'm not included, so it's dumb." That was the moment I realized the real damage my parents did wasn't money. It was the way they taught my daughter to label herself. I sat on the floor with her and said, "Listen to me. You are included. In my life, in our home, in every plan I make. That's the only inclusion that matters." She nodded, but her eyes still looked haunted. After she finally fell asleep, I called Victor. "I need to document everything," I told him. "You already did," he said. "The video was the key, but you also need to protect Gracie physically. What happened today? This is escalation. Can they actually do anything?" I asked. Victor paused. "They can try," he said. "Your parents are going to look for any angle that makes you seem unstable. And your mother tends to weaponize concern." He wasn't wrong. The next morning, a process server showed up at my job while I was on a call. The first page read, "Emergency petition for temporary guardianship, filed by my parents." They claimed I was financially reckless, emotionally volatile, and uncooperative with educational needs. They attached a photocopy of Gracie's learning plan like it was evidence of my incompetence. They even included a statement from Kendra, of course, praising my parents as stable caregivers. I sat in my car in the parking lot and laughed once dry, sharp because the irony was choking. The same people who humiliated my kid on a stage were now calling themselves her protectors. That night, my dad sent a text that looked polite on the surface and terrifying underneath. "We will see you in court. Bring Gracie. She deserves a stable home." I didn't respond. I screenshotted it. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Victor connected me with a family lawyer named Renee Park, a woman with calm eyes and a voice that didn't shake when she said hard things. Renee listened while I explained the banquet, the forged school form, the suitcase. She didn't gasp. She didn't pity me. She just took notes like she'd seen this kind of family before. Then she asked, "Do you have proof of the forgery?" I swallowed. "The school kept the form." "Good," she said. "And the suitcase? It had my daughter's name on it." Renee's mouth tightened. "That's not a casual mistake," she said. "That's planning." 2 days before the hearing, Victor emailed me an official notice from the trust. Occupancy benefit terminated. My parents had 30 days to vacate the lake house. I stared at the words until my eyes blurred, because suddenly the puzzle clicked into place. The house wasn't just where they lived. It was their leverage, their stage, their identity, and Aunt Darlene had just pulled the plug. My mom called me the second they received the notice. She didn't start with apologies. She started with panic. "Lauren, this is insane," she cried. "We're going to lose the house. We have nowhere to go." I almost asked if she'd worried about where my daughter's confidence would go when she tore it apart on a microphone. Instead, I said, You should have thought about that before you tried to take her from school. My dad got on speaker, voice like granite. You're destroying our lives. I kept mine flat. You did that. You just didn't think consequences applied to you. Then my mom said the one thing she thought would control me. If you love Gracie, she whispered, you'll stop Victor. My hands started shaking, but my voice stayed steady. If you loved Gracie, I said, you wouldn't have made her feel unwanted. Silence. Then my dad hissed. We can still make this ugly. He meant court. He meant rumors. He meant calling child services, because in my parents' world, authorities are just tools if you know how to talk, Renee warned me. They're going to file complaints, she said. They'll say they're concerned. They'll cry. They'll look calm. And they'll hope the system believes the grandparents over the single mom. I nodded. So what do I do? You stay boring, Renee said. You stay consistent. You stay documented. The morning of the hearing, I braided Gracie's hair and told her we were going to a building where grown-ups talk, and she wasn't in trouble. She nodded, but her fingers twisted in her lap the whole drive. Outside the courthouse, my parents were already there, dressed like they were attending a wedding. My mom clutched a tissue. My dad wore his reasonable face. Kendra stood with them, one hand on Isla's back like she was bringing a witness. Isla waved at Gracie like nothing was wrong. That was the detail that made my stomach roll. Isla had no idea she was being used as a weapon, too. We walked past them without stopping. My dad called after me, sweet as poison. We're doing this for the girls. For the girls, plural, like my daughter was just one of 2 assets to manage. Inside, Renee handed the judge the Banquet clip, the school's statement about the falsified form, and my updated contact list, showing I'd removed my parents immediately. The judge watched my mother smile into a microphone while excluding my child. He watched my father call her a failure. He watched me stand up and take her hand. And for the first time in this whole mess, an adult in authority looked at my parents the way I'd wanted people to look at them for years. Not charmed, not impressed, just concerned. The judge denied their emergency petition on the spot. Then he asked my parents one question that made my mom's face go pale. Why did you arrive at the school with a suitcase labeled with the child's name? My dad opened his mouth. My mom started to cry. And right then, my phone buzzed with a message from Gracie's after-school coordinator. Lauren, Gracie didn't show up to chess club today. Is she with you? My heart dropped so hard I tasted metal, because Gracie was sitting beside me. So who had just checked her out? Part 5. My hands were shaking so badly, Renee had to take my phone. She read the text, then looked up at the judge. Your Honor, she said calmly, we need a brief recess. Something is happening in real time. The judge frowned. Is the child safe? I swallowed. She's right here, I said, pulling Gracie closer. Gracie's face was already crumpling because she could tell adults were scared. Renee stepped into the hallway and called the after-school coordinator on speaker. The coordinator sounded flustered. I'm sorry. I thought someone called an hour ago and said Gracie was being picked up early for a family emergency, she explained. They gave the password on file. Password. I felt my blood go cold. Because I knew exactly whose voice could sound concerned, enough to get a staff member to follow a rule. Renee asked, Did anyone actually pick her up? No, the coordinator said quickly. She wasn't here. She never checked in. That's why I texted you. So my parents had tried to intercept my daughter at a second location while we were literally in court. They were testing doors. They were looking for a crack. When we walked back into the courtroom, Renee didn't have to dramatize it. She just stated the facts. A call made. A password used. An attempt to access a child who wasn't there. The judge's face hardened. My dad stood up, palms open, performing innocence. Your Honor, that's ridiculous. We were simply confirming her schedule. We're worried about her. Worried enough to use her pickup password without her mother's knowledge? The judge asked. My mom started to cry again. We're grandparents, she whispered. We love her. I stared at her and thought about that suitcase with Gracie's name on it. Love doesn't come with luggage tags. The judge looked at my parents and said, I am issuing a temporary no-contact order regarding the child pending further review. My mom made a sound like she'd been punched. My dad's face went tight with rage he couldn't show. Kendra grabbed my mom's arm, whispering fast, trying to keep the meltdown contained. Isla stood there blinking, confused, because this was the first time she'd seen adults not clap for my parents' performance. Outside, Gracie asked in a tiny voice. Does that mean they can't come to my school anymore? It means they're not allowed to surprise you, I told her. Not at school, not anywhere. She let out a shaky breath like her lungs had been holding a secret. That afternoon, Renee walked me through changing every password, every permission list, every just-in-case contact my parents had ever touched. The after-school program apologized. The school principal apologized. None of them had meant harm, but that's the problem with people like my parents. They don't need someone to mean harm. They just need someone to follow a policy. A week later, Child Protective Services knocked on my door because my parents filed a concern. I handed the investigator my folder, the Banquet video, the forged form, the court order, and my dad's voicemail threat. The case was closed 2 days later. My parents, meanwhile, were still screaming into the void. Victor sent the next trust update by email, clean and boring, which is how legal consequences should look. The trust would sell the lake house and deposit the proceeds into 2 protected sub-accounts. 60% for Gracie, 40% for Isla. Both accounts were locked until adulthood, with distributions allowed only for education, medical care, and housing support. My parents received nothing. No stipend. No temporary help. No special exception because they were loud. The notice gave them 30 days to move out. Kendra called me in a panic. Not about Gracie, but about Isla. Are you happy? She snapped. You're tearing the family apart. I stared at the phone and felt something settle in me, heavy and calm. Kendra, I said. Mom and Dad did this. I just stopped pretending it was normal. She hung up. 3 weeks later, my dad called from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity is a weak spot. His voice was quiet, controlled. We need help, he said. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just, we need. Ask Kendra, I said, and hung up. Here's the part nobody in my family expected. Kendra didn't save them. She protected Isla's 40%, like it was a vault, and told my parents she wasn't giving them a dime. Then she went right back to her life, because my parents raised her to believe love is a reward system, and she applied that lesson to them the minute it was inconvenient to be generous. The lake house sold in the spring. Not for millions, not for some movie number, just a solid sale that closed quietly while my parents tried to pretend they were still the main characters. They moved into a small rental across town, the kind with thin walls and no room for legacy dinners. Gracie didn't ask about them for a long time. When she finally did, it was one night while I was tucking her in. Do they hate me? She whispered. I swallowed. I don't know, I said carefully. But I do know their feelings are not your responsibility. She stared at the ceiling for a moment and then said, I wish they were normal. Me too, I admitted. Therapy helped. The specialist helped. Time helped. Gracie is still the same kid, sharp, creative, stubborn in the best way. She still reads slower than some people. She also catches details other people miss, like the way an adult's voice changes when they're lying. Last month, she brought home a library book and read me a page without stopping. When she finished, she looked up like she was bracing for a joke. I didn't joke. I just hugged her and said, I'm proud of you. She smiled, real, unguarded. That's what my parents almost stole. And if this story hit something in you, I want you to tell me, in a family like mine, what's the moral line? Do you protect the child even if it burns the whole family down? Drop your answer in the comments. Share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Because I can cut off contact. I can sell a house. I can win a court order. But I will never forget the sound of my daughter asking if she was in trouble for being wanted by the wrong people. And the scariest part? My parents still think they were the victims.